Okay. Welcome. For those online, can you hear us in the room? Yeah, it's up. Okay, Evan just gave us a heart. Okay, I do apologize for the delay this morning. We had a fire alarm go off. Hopefully it won't go off again and we're good to go for the day. But again, welcome to our 2025 Stages Big Partner Workshop. This is our third workshop. So we're proud of what we've accomplished over the last 3 years and are hoping that we can continue this into future beyond stages. So to start with some housekeeping, restrooms are out the back doors and to the left or to the right near the elevators. Also, if you are a guest and would like to access the university Wi-Fi, there is a sheet on each of the tables that you with the instructions that are listed here. Our agenda for the day, we're going to go around the room and do some introductions first. Then Dr. Tissot is going to give a talk that's background and introduction on AI and where it's going. Then we will move into our trainees' prospectus presentations. We'll start with the air quality, then the Thunderstorms group. And then we may not have the break because of the fire alarm this morning. We'll see where we're at with time. But then the water quality and bacteria group will present. We'll have lunch, and this afternoon, breakout sessions. The breakout rooms, we'll have one group stay here, and then the rest of the ballroom, there's 2 more rooms going down. The next 2 groups will go into one of those. After those breakout groups, the groups will come back and give a short report out on their discussions and their next steps. And then we will break for the day. So the NRT program, or the Stages program particularly, is a 1-year traineeship for our students. It is an NSF-funded research traineeship, and STAGES stands for Stakeholder Guided Environmental Science, but it is a bit of a mouthful. The purpose of NRTs is to support interdisciplinary evidence-based traineeships that advance ways for graduate students in research-based master's and doctoral degree programs to pursue a range of STEM careers. So we are really looking for ways to enhance our students' education to make them more ideal candidates for whatever career they go into. Our program is led by Dr. Darina Mergelet, and she's joined by 4 co-PIs, Dr. Jennifer Pollock, Chantal Liu, Philippe Tissot, and Jennifer Eckley-Sanders. For that, though, I would like to hand it over to Dr. Mergelet for a few words.
Take this thing out of there because I'm too short. Oops. And that. Okay, so excuse me. I just want to, Darina, I want to thank my colleagues that have joined into putting together this proposal during summer. What started in spring, then during summer meetings almost every week to come up with the plan for this program, which, if you're curious, it was all based on our experiences working with students in the CMSS, which was supposed to be the cross-disciplinary program from the very beginning, but we thought it was going a little silo in everybody working in their own labs on their own ideas, but we no. Okay, so it's time for me to shut up. I just want to say that it was group work.
May I have your attention, please? No. There has been a fire emergency reported in the building.
So what we were told is that the community and the next program, if it's not okay, we're going to get this.
Su atención, por favor.
Electoral problems.
Fue reportado un aviso de incendio en el edificio. Por favor, evacúe el
In
edificio.
this building, it doesn't matter. Okay, I'll see that. I can talk. We can go into the engineering building if you'd like to stay in the.
Okay, so we moved to a classroom in engineering to continue to move forward while the fire alarm continues to go off, as you've heard. So let me see. Oh, so to Dr. Mergler kind of finished her remarks. But if we can go around the room and just quickly with the co-PIs, giving a short introduction to yourselves.
Hi, I'm Philippe Tissot. I'm at the Conrad Butcher Institute, Chair for Coastal Artificial Intelligence, and that's what I do. Okay. Go.
Chantal Liu and Professor in Atmospheric Science, helping the program.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, I'm not behind anymore. You deserve it. Thank you. So my name is Jin Hu. I'm a technical sonographer. I used to be here. I was one of the co-PIs here, and I moved to UCAMSI last year. I probably met some of you at the class earlier this year at the seminar class, right? So who's next?
Back to me. So we are here today for the big partner workshop. So as I said earlier, this is a 1-year traineeship, and the students start in January and it goes to following December, January. So this spring they've been taking coursework and went on a field trip to focus on interdisciplinary science and connections between land, sea, and air. And now we are here at the big workshop. We've had a series of small or mini workshops featuring individual partners coming and talking or starting the conversation with our trainees. The goal of this workshop series is to build connections between our students and the stakeholders or our partners, generate a list of big data-oriented problems, and co-develop research questions of interest, not only to our partners, but also to our students and our faculty, that the students can work on in groups for the next 5 to 6 months. So in the next few months, they will continue taking coursework that guides their project. So briefly, this summer, they will take the big data blitz that's focused on ingesting their data and pre-processing it. You can hear that it's ready to start analysis and modeling in the fall in the environmental forecasting class. So again, Stages seeks to connect innovative research to practitioner and community needs to answer stakeholder-guided questions of regional and national concern. And we go about this not only through these workshops, but through field trips. So we've had stakeholders or partners join us for brief talks on field trips, like the Meadow Center, the San Antonio Bay Partnership. And we've, over the last 3 years, had many stakeholders, partners take from NGOs and local nonprofits up to government at state, local, federal levels, as well as a little bit of industry involvement. So we've had a variety of participation with our program. This year, our mini workshops featured 6 partners: Coastal Bend Bays and Estuaries Program, Ingleside on the Bay Coastal Watch Association, Friends of the Pecos River, National Weather Service, Sierra Club Lone Star Chapter, and Texas General Land Office. So I'd like to now give a chance for our stakeholder community partners to introduce themselves.
Hi, my name is Peyton Campbell. I'm with Coastal Watch Association, and I'm their air and water monitoring coordinator, just general science coordinator, really. And hello.
I'm not sure where John went. But we've also got some partners joining us online. Evan.
Hi, I'm Evan Turner from the Texas Water Development Board. How you doing? Been very busy up here. I was formerly an A&M Corpus Christi graduate 2 times over, so big ties to the A&M campus there, and really looking forward to seeing what you all have come up with. I'm sorry I'm not there in person. It's very, very busy when you get these jobs, and especially working for the state. So I'm actually quadruple booked for meetings today. So, but I'm gonna stay on as much as I can and participate. So thank you so much for having me here.
Thank you, Evan. And Jason?
Hey everyone, my name is Jason. I'm a member of the Sierra Club and the local Coastal Bend chapter. This is my first stages of it. It's been cool to see how it's progressing. Also a resident here in Corpus Christi. Thanks.
Thank you. And I think that's it. Okay. So a bunch of our other partners were not able to join us today because of prior commitments, but also because the legislative session. They're spending a lot of time in Austin advocating. So for cohort 3, we have 8 trainees and 1 peer mentor, or sorry, 2 peer mentors. Sorry, peer mentors, I did not get you added to the slide. Our trainees are from 2 programs, Coastal Marine System Science and Marine Biology. And they're split down the middle between master's students and PhD students. The previous cohorts, cohort 1 had 9 trainees, cohort 2 had 8 trainees. And I think in total we have had representation from 5 different degree programs and applicants from 8 degree programs. Our trainees will introduce themselves during their presentations, so you'll get to hear from them. We also have, our trainees all have faculty advisors also, and I'd like to give them a chance to introduce themselves.
Good morning, everyone. I'm Danny Coffey. I'm an assistant professor in the Department of Life Sciences, focusing on marine ecology and fisheries biology.
I'm Daryl Orbach. I'm an assistant professor of marine biology, also in the Department of Life Sciences. And I'm Emily's advisor, and also Michaela, who's mentoring, is also here. So very proud of both of them.
Hi, I'm Fei Xie. I'm a professor in physical environmental science, specifically in the M3 science program, and I'm the analysis supervisor.
Hello, my name is Silva. I'm assistant professor of applied math from Western Statistics Department, and we are with Alex Sadowski, co-chairing Jane.
And I'm Alex Sadowski, I'm professor of math and chair of okay. Okay, I can go from the line with the it's not voice.
Okay, while you're there, yeah, so in addition to our faculty advisors for our students, we are also joined today by some campus administration and also some faculty that are co-instructing the Big Data Blitz over the summer.
Thanks, Audrey. I'm Janet Donaldson. I am the Associate Vice President for Research. I've had the pleasure of knowing several of the students, and I'm very proud of y'all and very excited for this program.
And before I go around to Dr. Naharmani, one more.
Already.
We were joined by one more of our partners.
Good morning, everyone. John Metz with the National Weather Service here in Corpus Christi. I'm the meteorologist in charge and excited to see the potential research project going forward with the subject of meteorology. So it's very exciting. It could help us operationally improve our services here in South Texas. So thank you.
And then one of our instructors for the Big Data Blitz, as well as the instructor for the environmental forecasting class, is also here today.
Hello, everyone. My name is Roya Naiman. I'm a postdoctoral research associate and also adjunct faculty here. I joined MUCC about 2 years ago. So I got my PhD in water resources and coastal engineering. I'm working with Dr. Morgole. So nice to meet you.
Thank you. So again, those are just short introductions to everybody that's here today. We do have one more instructor online, Mike.
Yeah, hello everybody. I'm Mike Starrick. Sorry, I'm in my vehicle here driving. I'm professor of geospatial systems engineering and I help with the summer course. And if you have questions on remote sensing or GIS related things or topics in your research, reach out. And great to be here.
Thank you, Mike. So the charge for today is that the trainees will first give their project prospectus presentations, which will outline the project topics and timelines to facilitate discussion to further refine and co-develop those questions in the breakout discussions this afternoon. So in those breakout discussions, the idea is that you have detailed discussions of data availability and access and develop communication plans. So how often reports will be given or meetings, and setting, expectations for the projects. And again, we'll be hopefully back in the Lone Star Ballroom in the UC, and we have the 3 sections, and each group will be assigned a section. But, oops, there's a slide missing in here. So it's actually now time for Dr. Tissot to give his talk, discussing or introducing AI and machine learning and a little bit of detail in its history and where it's going.
So the UC is back, but I said that we should stay here for Philippe's talk. And if something happens again, then we'll be right? But if nothing happens while Philippe gives his talk, then we'll go there after and start there with student presentations.
Apologize on the belief. I don't want to read the rules. Yes. Sorry.
JPC first, when we come back.
Okay.
All right. So my task is to talk about AI. I'll be picking some slides, probably a little shorter. I want to emphasize Dr. Morgole's talk earlier about the importance of multidisciplinarity. The CMSS program, when we put it together in the early 2000s, was quite unusual. There was the reviewers, half of them said, this is never going to happen. You're not going to find students to be able to spread through that. If you're doing something that is oceanography, you should have biological oceanography, chemical oceanography, geological oceanography, and physical oceanography. That's how it's done. And others said, yes, this is highly needed. We need to be more multidisciplinary and be able to interact with each other as problems are just more complex. And I think the success of the CMSS and the ladder, I think, continues to be more and more important. Most of the problems we're facing, and to also justify our jobs towards society who's paying us directly or indirectly, we have to make a difference. And to make a difference, our problems are related to people, decisions, policies. And it is by nature multidisciplinary, and finding a way to co-produce problems, work with each other is very important. That comes a little bit at the cost of having looser foundations in chemical oceanography, physical oceanography. But I think that's what's needed. So the NRT stages is very much along that side, and I'm really happy that Dr. Mergel, Audrey, and the team push that, because we need to constantly reinvent ourselves. We need more social scientists, and it's not easy. How are we going to do that? And another big part is working with stakeholders. I think the co-production, my last slides are going to be about that, the co-production of scientific problems, meaning starting with the stakeholders at the very root as we're defining the questions, rather than coming and say, hey, we're great scientists, we have this tool, how can we adapt it to your needs? That's too late most of the time. We're not going to answer exactly what they need, and they don't have the time to make big adaptations. And so working with the stakeholders, being multidisciplinary, I think is a high need to the future, and I think you guys are learning good skills that should be very helpful for decades to come. But so at the beginning, TAMU-CC was very early on AI. We started developing AI models for the environment in 1999. That was part of the pitch also for the CMSS PhD program at the time. And we've continued on, and it's widely used. It was very unpopular, by the way, for the first 15 years. And everything's changed, and so now we're smiling, and it became way bigger than I ever envisioned. So I think Jason, you can see the screen all good? There's a message there about not seeing the screen online, but I think there's a... That's all. That's all. Okay, great. All right, so I'm Philippe Tissot. I'm going to do an overview on AI. I'm going to pick a few slides. Oops. I may have to, yeah, that should work. Some history of AI. How many of you have used AI? 1, 2, 3, 4. So the majority. All right. So I'm gonna go. I'm not. This is more. This is a little bit of a broader talk. So I'm gonna. The part of how does AI work is gonna be. I'm gonna go over some of our coastal models. And then I'm going to make sure I have some time to the new generative AI models, weather models. While not all of you will work on weather drives a lot of what we do in terms of environmental sciences. And most of actually the 3 projects there are driven by weather, precip, winds, and others. So we'll do that. And then trust in AI on our side. Trust is a big focus of our research. So we, for us at CBI, a big event was being one of the co-PIs of the inaugural National Science Foundation AI Institute. TAMU-CC was the only R2 university in the nation to be co-PI of an institute like that. Those were a $20 million project, and so that allowed us to work with a lot of other universities, private sector companies. We work a lot with the weather company, and we work a lot with John and Anthony's office. Actually, 1999, the start of AI was very much with their office, and some national labs. A big part of our research, and one of the reasons I think we were funded, is that AI is super, giving better and better results. But will we trust it? Should we trust it? What information do we need to give to the users to help them decide if they should trust it or not? Hallucinations can happen everywhere. So that's the framework of what we do. In terms of history of AI, so this is ChatGPT, thank you. And we do mostly the non-ChatGPT type of AI, but the power of ChatGPT, you should all use ChatGPT one way or another and learn how to take advantage of it. But we started with rule-based, particularly in the 70s, 80s, expert systems, and that did not work. And AI kind of went down. Then we went with machine learning, neural nets, starting in the 80s, but really the 90s and 2000s. And that worked pretty well and was kind of the basis. And then we reinforcement learning, and then generative AI has really taken everything to another level. But it's that progression. The AI itself started 1955, 1956. That's when the term was coined. It was for a proposal for a summer school, and then the summer school took place. And I like to show this slide because it shows the type of topics that they were studying. At the beginning, AI was about robotics, and it's still very much about robotics, probably increasingly, and about understanding how the brain works. The environment was not mentioned. When we talk about AI for the environment, we have to wait the mid-80s. The mid-80s, the American Meteorological Society had a committee or a group that formed and looked at expert systems for tornadoes and other things like that, but it didn't work. It was not efficient enough. And then neural nets is, and in the mid-80s, there was no mention of neural nets. In the late 90s, when neural nets really started to become possible, just because of the computers, like a simple neural net, late 90s or 2000, it took me a weekend to train a small neural net. Right now, my students do it in 10 seconds. So the ability to compute has been tightly linked with basically the progression of AI. In 1998, it was the first conference, American Meteorological Society conference on AI. And I think in terms of AI and the environment in the United States, that has probably been the premier conference where we test and not just the weather in general. And here you start having topics that are environmentally focused, and the topics haven't changed that much since the late 90s. The topics haven't changed that much, but the techniques have changed quite a bit. So if we look at that progression, this is that conference, the AMS AI conference, and it was a fantastic group. Joined in 2001, started presenting in 2003, and for a long, long time, it was a tight-knit community of 35, 50 people, meeting each other every year and having a good time and thinking about the project. But we weren't growing. And in 2017, we discussed canceling the 2018 conference because there wasn't that much interest, so we could do it every 2 years. And in that room, in that discussion, you would find some names that are pretty well known in the AI and environmental sciences, like Sue Hope, John Williams, Valia Balachmanman, etc. And we said, no, it's in Austin, let's do it. And we had no idea that this was really going to be a dramatic ramp up. Then there was this kind of lag, and suddenly when it catches on, AI gets big really, really quick. We don't know how big it is. This January we're on 300 presentations, and it's spreading through the other field. But so the AI keeps on getting bigger. Big dates also. 1986 was when the backpropagation algorithm was devised, including including Hinton, who got recently the Nobel Prize. And 2012 for me, also Hinton involved there. The AlexNet, the first convolutional neural net that was able to analyze images and predict what's in an image. And there was a lot of contests in these days, and the contests that we were organizing, people were winning by 0.5%, 0.2%, 0.3%. And then these guys with AlexNet, they come in and they win by 10 percentage points. And so that's kind of the day one of modern AI. And the master students who published his thesis, I think the conference proceeding is something like 300,000 citations. And so not bad for a master's. So if you're doing a master's, that's a good, just kidding. And then the other big point when we think about AI, 2022, ChatGPT, of course. Certainly a surprise to me. And we were working on the transformer-based models at the time, but no idea what those things could do. And at the very same time, ForecastNet, the NVIDIA model for weather, and I'll have a slide that consider that. And they came at the same time. They're just as revolutionary, I think. But the weather one is not as well known as the ChatGPT. So AI keeps on going. I don't know how. I think it's going to get bigger for a while. I think it's going to be kind of everywhere. And it's going to change shape, form. But yeah, you have to understand it. for ChatGPT, you probably have to use it. And as for your models, you should justify using it, but you should consider it. If you're doing well without AI, keep on going. But use the tool. Okay. So here at CAMU-CC, we're working, we're emphasizing that the interaction between land, ocean, atmosphere is really a good setup for using AI, because we have nonlinear interactions, so difficult to model, and AI is great. Actually, if it's not nonlinear, you should not use AI. But for nonlinear systems, there's a very good potential with AI. And the gridded models between the ocean, the river, atmosphere, it's difficult to match. Like atmosphere, ocean, waves, now that's in pretty good shape. But when we go with the land and rivers, this is still pretty difficult. And so I think the interaction is still a fertile ground. So that's the reason that the setup. How AI works, I'm not going to spend too much time. I consider it largely as a mapping or filtering dimension reduction problem. In the like our classic models and our operational models still very much look like this. You have a bunch of inputs. Anything you can put your hands on, if it's related to what you're trying to predict or explain, use it. It's got to be consistent. You got to have enough data. And with just those two things, I shrunk considerably the number of variables. But it doesn't have to be directly related either. You can use something as a proxy as long as it's consistent. So there's flexibility in AI. There's drawbacks. Then you have all these inputs. You have a bunch of small computational units. The computational units go another 5 minutes. Okay. And then I'm going to switch. And you can, and then you have the different kind of loss functions. That's the model. I'm gonna pick what I want to work on. So we've applied. I'm gonna tell you what we've applied on. We've applied it with quite a bit of success on water level predictions, with using just the simple neural net. We have now more complex neural nets based on deep learning. Sequence to sequence is what happened. That was the work of Marina Vicens-Miquel. I'm gonna go, so good results there. We're deploying them for local. So something is, can you take advantage of large amounts of data? Then you put in a temporary sensor for a year or two, and then you try to take advantage of the data from the backbone to make AI predictions for a local plot. And I think we have a pretty good method that is now operational for Magnolia Beach. We've worked, let's see, I'm gonna check. We've worked on lightnings. I'm gonna pass that. We've worked quite a bit on fog. The fog model we presented in John's office is how do you predict fog using large data sets. We've tried. We have models that are based on transformers, like the ChatGPT base. And they were great, but they would be very difficult to implement. And we have another type of architecture, variational autoencoder, that we're working on. And that's a pretty good, for your projects, this is something that works pretty well. You sort of shrink all the data that's available into a latent space, a reduced dimensional latent space, and then you predict whatever you want. And for us, it's visibility in 12 hours. And so we have a model, and then you have a loop here. We have a live 12-hour model there. That's we don't quite know how well it is. We're hoping that John and his team are going to tell us, but it's just 12 hours, so it's difficult for them to test. But we should have a full model by the end of the summer. So we have those different type of applications, lots of data. We use some kind of AI architectures, and we predict something that is of importance to a stakeholder, and that's going to help decision making. I'm going to finish. We work a lot with sea turtles. Since 2009, we have an operational model that tells when the cold spilling will take place. And we work with a large group of stakeholders. The way the model works is we have, so we measure air temperature and water temperature, and then we use air temperature predictions from both the weather company and from John's office, the NDFD model. And those feed into a neural net, a simple neural net like the one I showed. Operationally, we're using mostly simple neural net. And it gives us water temperature predictions. And we have a threshold, and so we predict when it's going to break the threshold. And during that time, then navigation is stopped, dredging is stopped, and people prepare to get to rescue the sea turtles. And that has generally worked quite well. This winter, we had 3 such events that has been tougher. Give us better air temperature prediction. Actually, the weather company, and it's difficult in extreme events. There's biases, and so that's the thing. What happens when you give predictions is people want it longer lead time. You give them 12 hours, they want 24. You give them 100, they want 120. Right now, we're stopping at 120. And so at some point, it becomes way too uncertain. And stakeholders are capable of making decisions with a lot of uncertainty. They have so many things to consider. So often we underestimate their ability to do that. But we want to be honest as scientists, and so we want to give them our understanding of the uncertainty, such that people can trust it or not, or know what level of trust. So there's 2 big questions that we're working on now, is how do you create uncertainty quantification for AI models? And the answer is that you need to go with ensembles for both the neural nets, because every time you train a neural net, you have a different model. So you always have ranges rather than one answer. So you have to do, and then how do you communicate it? And so we're working on how to communicate with the stakeholders, and that's difficult because they say uncertainty quantification, great. And then you show them graphs and like that, and they say, oh, this is way too complex. I don't want to see that. And so how do you do it? And that's the general problems. How do you do the uncertainty quantification? And you can't just do straight ensembles. And how do you communicate it? And to do that, you need to co-produce. You need to work directly with the stakeholders, very much in the way that Stages is set up. This is the work by Miranda White and her team. The paper is just about to be submitted. And then I'm going to I'm going to finish with trust in AI. So will we trust AI? And we've been studying that for 4 years with a group of risk communication scientists at NCAR and at the University of Washington and University of Oklahoma. And we've submitted surveys. We have different projects. We've been part of a couple of them. We interview one of them. We interview forecasters, including forecasters from John's office. And we ask them, do you trust it? What do you think about it? And without getting too much into the detail, and we also, some of them, we tell them that our models or future models are AI, and others we don't tell them. So we're trying to see if there's a difference, if they know that it's AI or not. And for the scientist type users, a little bit to my surprise, I don't think AI matters that much. They consider, say, oh, it's a brand new model. So some of them are a little skeptical because of AI, because of ChatGPT, because of the hallucinations, or they don't like too much new technologies. And others are very enthusiastic. They say, yeah, we're going to take better advantage of the data. It's new technology. And overall, our conclusion now is that AI is, at least for weather environment, is probably more like a new technology, not that different than the others, which was not the initial hypothesis. And so that's, I've already shared. So based on that and all that I've shared, we push. This is a paper that was published last year in Nature Natural Hazard, for kind of our message on how things should go. And it's really to push a convergent methodology, like co-producing, working closely with partners at the very beginning while we're defining the problems. It's not easy. You need relatively large resources to be able to do that. If I wasn't part of AI2ES, I would have never been able. Not enough people, not enough resources. But we think that it's the way to go. And Stages is very much built around a similar model. So that's my thoughts on AI. That was an SFAI2ES this June. There's probably about 15 CC students, I think, in there. And so that's been a good time. So yeah, I encourage Dr. Naima, who's teaching environmental forecasting, knows a lot about it. Several of us know quite a bit, so use it and we can discuss. Questions? Any question online also? I kept on looking at the chat, and I will keep on looking at the chat.
What about DeepSeek?
DeepSeek, I think it's a big one. I think the competition between China and the US is enormous. It's a vital national view. Exactly how it works, there's the distillation part that is very intriguing. But I think there's going to be a lot of competition.
And also, what they say in reality, that it's not so high, maybe chips, but a very interesting, I didn't see, but absolutely new algorithm. In reality, when I ask this as a mathematician, I want people to say that algorithms are backbone of all these things.
Yeah. I think on the environmental AI, we don't use directly, we use the same basic, like the transformer. I think we like the transformer architecture, but the data is quite different. Our environmental data is a lot more curated. You're going to spend 2/3 of your time with the data. And so when we do AI with data, we really spend a lot of time. On the other hand, the large language models, it's just enormous amounts of data, language, the whole Wikipedia or the whole internet. And so then the chances of hallucinations are a lot larger on the LLMs than I think they are in the type of model we build. We should still be worried about biases. How is it going to behave during extreme events, which are rare in the data? So that's a challenge because AI is database. But that's where the uncertain quantification becomes important. Can you have a realistic uncertain quantification when you make predictions or when you compute extreme events that are not seen that much in the data? I think it's working better than I thought it would 10 years ago. For the presentation, I have a question online. The presentation will be posted online. Yes, I have a PDF there, and you could post it. Yeah, Audrey will. All right, Faye?
That's a quick question. I'm a little bit surprised the National Weather Service researcher probably not totally surprised. So do you worry about if AI model is starting growing a lot and the physical model will dying off? Are we getting to that kind of stage, or you are foreseeing that in the near future that could be a problem? Because we spend so much since, we spend so much resource doing developing the physical model. And now it looks like if AI can do the work, and is that going to be a problem?
I think, and John could answer to that, I think there's I don't know how much it's going to replace it. Right now, the AI weather model don't predict all the variables, but the performance is really remarkable. This spring, there was a track of a hurricane that was predicted better by AI than any of the numerical models. I think AI is going to have a huge role. In terms of the National Weather Service office, we're talking about that with John. They constantly have new technologies, and then a large part of their work is they're the ones who understand it, they're the ones who can adapt it to the local conditions, and they're the ones who are doing all the communication work, the preparation. Like Harvey, nobody died. Cat 4 direct hits in the coastal bend, nobody dies directly after that. That's the National Weather Service office. And so that role, I think, is staying. AI is probably going to change the structure, But when you look at really local impacts, I think you need local scientists. So I'm certainly hoping that the National Weather Service will keep on. Maybe they will be using AI rather than the present models, but I would hope that something similar stays. I don't know, John, any comment before I pass on the?
Yes, I'm not directly connected to the model developers. I know that we're continuing that the numerical models that are used in the National Weather Service likely to continue going forward. So I don't see those going away. But certainly AI is being ingested into the process, and at some point it might replace, but I think we're still a ways away from that. Years.
I will.
Okay. Thank you, Dr. Tissot. And we've received the all clear again from the UC. So we're going to head back over for the student presentations in the UC room.
Okay, I think we are ready to get started again. We missed one introduction earlier, and that was our one of our peer mentor that's with us today, Michaela. If you can quickly introduce yourself.
Hello everyone, my name is Michaela. I am a marine biology PhD student. I am the team advisor for this student robot. And yeah, I was part of cohort 1, so really excited to be back as a peer mentor. We have one more executive team member that has joined us since introductions earlier.
Hello, everybody. My name is Jenny Gonzalez. I am an endowed chair at the Hart Research Institute and a professor of marine biology. My work focuses on habitat conservation and restoration.
Thank you. So I would like to just reiterate the charge for the day. Again, our trainees will give their prospectus presentations, which will provide an outline of the project topics that they have selected and their timelines. And this is designed to facilitate discussion and refining and co-development of those research questions. So they will also have some questions that they've come up with to help guide the discussions this afternoon. And then in the breakout sessions this afternoon, we're looking for more detailed discussions between the trainees and their stakeholder partners about the data availability and access, and also development of a communication plan. So we'll bring up the room assignments again later, but with that, we'll go into our first group presentation, and this is just short, air quality. They can introduce their project name themselves, but it is Jasmine Nice and Delaney Peters. There is the share. Okay, you want to check it?
Perfect. All right, thank you everyone. Since we are the first group, I'm going to say on behalf of cohort 3, thank you for being here and supporting us, and then also presenting us with your problems so that we can try to attempt to work them through. I want to do a quick introduction. I'm Delaney, and this is Jasmine here. We're going to be talking about our Air Aware product, where we would like to try to predict the coastal air quality using machine learning and remote sensing. And before we get too far, I would like to acknowledge the Coastal Watch Association for their presentation on their air quality issues, and as well as Texas A&M Corpus Christi for, of course, being the host station, and then the NSF for funding the STAGES project. Just a quick little background about myself. I am a first-year CMSS master's student, and I study under Dr. Fay. My bachelor's is in atmospheric science from here on the island, and my thesis focus is planetary boundary layer height detection using GNSS radio occultation. And I know that's a lot of jargon, but basically I investigate the lowest part of the atmosphere using GPS satellite signals. And I'll hand it off to Jasmine to introduce herself.
Hi, everybody. My name is Jasmine Nice. I am a first-year PhD student in the marine biology program here at A&M Corpus. I am not an atmospheric scientist. I am actually a movement ecologist who studies fish and sharks. That's what my background is actually in. So I actually have an MS in fisheries from the University of Alaska Fairbanks and did my BS in marine sciences from the University of New England. My dissertation focuses on the movement and trophic ecology of estuarine fishes here in our local bays and estuaries. Basically, what I'm doing is looking at how they move and interact with their environment, but also what they're eating. So we're using stable isotope analysis and stomach content analysis to do that. We're also doing some microplastic analysis. So stay tuned for that, and I would love to talk more if you're interested. But we're just going to start off today with a brief introduction and talk about our stakeholder, Coastal Watch Association. This is open to other stakeholders if they are interested or do have data to provide. So one of the big things, as many of us know, is Corpus Christi is a huge oil refining and shipping hub here on South Texas coast. This will mainly contribute to a lot of air emissions here in our local communities. And unfortunately, as many of us know, this is a very windy city. So a lot of these coastal winds are going to spread these pollutants across the region, which may impact our local communities negatively, but we don't fully know because we're not quite sure how they move yet. So the biggest problem here is that current monitoring is very passive. So we actually don't know until after the fact, and we don't have very much preventative monitoring occurring. And with new permits coming into the region, some of these air emissions may worsen over time. So this is something that is very important in the now. And real-time forecasting tools are not fully available here in the coastal bay or coastal bend. This is leaving a lot of communities, unfortunately, lower socioeconomic communities uninformed, and they have delayed and incomplete information. So this is a pretty big problem that we are seeing in our local communities. So why it matters at the end of the day, these winds are carrying these pollutants, and this is one of the questions that we may be able to answer within this project, is how they're moving and where they are moving to, how quickly that's distributing, how the winds may be impacting that. And tracking these airshed trends is very important for monitoring future conditions, especially as we all know, the climate is changing and there's lots of pollution ongoing within our systems. So this predictive modeling may be able to boost the public awareness and also guide some decisions about air quality. I just want to briefly touch on the stakeholder that pitched this project to us, the Coastal Watch Association. They were a nonprofit founded in 2019. And they promote environmental health, safety, and public awareness through research and education. They do partner with institutions and academic institutions such as us. So this is one of the great things about working so closely with local stakeholders. And the nice thing about this organization is they monitor air quality in the San Patricio, Aransas, and Nueces counties, so it gives us a lot of great data to look at in our local community. And now I will pass it back to Delaney to go over some of our problem objectives.
Perfect. Thank you so much. All right. So just to kind of get a background of what we hope to accomplish, we want to develop a machine learning model to predict poor air quality days for the region using satellite and ground-based monitoring data. A main thing is to identify the key drivers of these bad air quality days and then create accessible forecasting tools for community use. Just some background here, there are machine learning models that have statistically predicted air quality in major cities. Specifically in Europe, they're doing a lot of air quality monitoring and modeling out there. We are not up to par yet with air quality monitoring here in the States, but we hope to get there soon. The Coastal Watch Association and partners, such as the Texas Commission on Environmental Quality, collect surface level pollutant data in the coastal bend. And then satellite and model data sets offer a detailed meteorological and atmospheric composition inputs so that we can help monitor where these pollutants are going. And then at the moment, there's not an integrated model that works for predicting air quality in this coastal industrial region. So some of these proposed data sources that we have come up with were the ground monitoring station, as I mentioned. So Ingleside on the Bay, they monitor along with a few of their industry partners, as well as in conjunction with the University of Texas at Arlington. And the TCEQ, as I mentioned, they monitor all throughout the state of Texas with a few here in the Corpus Bay area. And then Dr. Felix, who is the CMSS program chair here on campus, he also monitors air quality. Some of the satellite data that we wanted to look into was the Tempo satellite. This is an hourly data set when the sun is present, so roughly about 12 hours a day. And it's a 2 kilometer by 2 kilometer grid of the continental US. And then of course the atmosphere drives all of these issues, right? So to begin with, we would start with the ECMWF reanalysis version 5, which is ERA 5. This is a every 3-hour pressure model on a 25 by 25 kilometer grid. It is here on campus because it's currently what we use for a lot of things. If this is too coarse, we do have backup options in the HRRR model or the North American model to see if there are specific areas that we need to improve on. And then also high split trajectory modeling, which is what NOAA currently uses for plume monitoring. These are the monitor stations that TCEQ currently runs. They are all over the state, but they are mainly focused in our major cities because that's where the majority of air pollution exists. And then here in the coastal bend, we have, I think it's 5 in the Corpus Christi area, and then they kind of expand when you get closer to San Antonio and Austin, or San Antonio and Houston. So there's a need for more monitoring here in the bend. And then this is our proposed model. We are definitely open to suggestions on what we should do. But at the moment, we are looking at the random forest modeling. So it handles nonlinear relationships, which are interactions between variables, which the atmosphere is very nonlinear. And it's robust to noisy and missing data just in case there aren't as many days or there are less monitoring stations available on the ground. So we can use that. It's also very quick to train and test. So if we notice a problem straight away, it should be easier to prevent that. And then it also has feature importance to help identify what pollutants or meteorological factors contribute the most. So again, as I mentioned, we would like to be able to say that if this is going to happen today, then you have a better chance for a bad air quality day. And I'll give it to Jasmine to discuss our timeline.
Okay, so this project is perfect for our 6-month timeline here with the STAGES program. So starting in June, we will get all of our data and start to clean that. In July, we'll start to validate our data sets and explore the data a little bit more closely to see kind of what's going on there. In August, we'll be able to begin to train our machine learning model, where we will move into September, where we can begin forecasting and starting to get some outputs from our analysis during our environmental forecasting class. In October, we will begin to visualize those results and draft our tools. And then through November and December, we will begin to finalize those products and present at our final stakeholder meeting in December. As for anticipated outputs, so the first thing that we would be, first output that we'd be anticipating is a machine learning model. This is going to forecast our poor air quality days. We will have an integrated data set that will combine all of our satellite and ground-based monitoring stations and sources. We'll also have our satellite data, which will validate the local scale air quality monitoring. And then we will also have a framework that we'll be drafting for the community to kind of allow them to understand other than scientists, to bring it down to a community level. So it's a little bit less jargony and more applicable to those members of the community. And now I'll pass back to Delaney for our outcomes.
Perfect, thank you. So one of the main outcomes, obviously, is an improved forecasting capacity for the Coastal Watch Association and their local partners. We would also like to create a scalable foundation for regulatory and permit-related modeling so that moving forward, we can give scientific-based reasoning for why we should be monitoring it. Support proactive responses to pollution events, because as you said, it is a passive monitoring. We don't really know when it's going to happen, but when it does happen, we need to be able to get that information out quickly. And then enhance public awareness for air quality risk. Knowing what's in your air, you're probably going to care a little bit more about what gets put into it. And then just some challenges and feasibility that we foresee happening. The main challenges is being incomplete or inconsistent ground level monitoring data. To my knowledge, all of the data starts in 2020 and then expands as you get closer to the present time. And then the resolution mismatch between satellite and surface data sets, as I mentioned, one's on a 2 kilometer, whereas the other one is 25. This could be kind of an issue to work with. And then also limited access to real-time data from the TCEQ. We aren't completely aware of what that is going to look like. As for feasibility, though, we do believe that this aligns specifically with the STAGES 6-month timeline. Prior research and partner data sets ensure a strong foundation for a good start. And then existing monitoring networks will support our data needs if we can't get to a majority of the satellite stuff. And just some quick conclusions here to wrap up what we discussed. Air pollution from industrial activity impacts public health in the coastal bend and beyond.
Communities are lacking the tools to fully understand and anticipate these poor air quality days.
This project will build a predictive model using machine learning and integrated data sets.
The outputs will serve for local awareness, support monthly reporting, and inform future permitting decisions.
And then this project is feasible within the stages timeline and builds strong data and partner support. We just want to give a quick thank you again to the Coastal Watch Association for this project, and as well as the Stages group. But we just wanted to leave these questions up here to kind of get you started to think when we go into our breakout sessions. How reliable and accessible is the ground level monitoring data from the Coastal Watch Association and their partners?
Can this be expanded to cover a broader region outside of Ingleside on the Bay?
What limitations exist in accessing or using real-time data with the TCEQ?
What level of forecasting accuracy is needed for community trust and decision-making?
And how can we make this tool accessible and understandable for non-technical users? And that is it. We're open for questions.
Thank you.
Very nice presentation. I think over the years it's better and better. So my question is, you talk about the pollutant. What exactly is pollutant? It's PM2.5 or chemicals, whatever.
And so I actually wanted to clarify this morning with Peyton, and he discussed with me that it's nitrogen dioxide or NO2, SO2, particulate matter 2.5 and 10, the total VOC content, and ozone. And I believe that is pretty consistent across all of the ground monitoring stations.
My question is related. Great presentation. How do you define, or how will you define poor air quality days?
So there are limitations. There are standards across the industries that if they exceed those emissions, they need to be reported. So I think that's another question that we were going to discuss with Peyton, like where exactly is that threshold? So some of the industry have that threshold already kind of stated within their systems. So we'd have to dig a little bit deeper to fully make sure that we have that standard across all of them. But that's something that we'd like to talk to our stakeholder about as well.
And to add to that, I believe the TCEQ and the EPA have their own thresholds for what bad air quality is. So we would need to decide what threshold we actually wanted to use. So it's something ongoing. We haven't completely nailed everything down yet.
Great question.
Good job. I have a question. You talk about you need a real-time data. So how real-time you talk about? Half hour for your monitoring or 1 hour? If you have any idea how quick you need the data?
Actually, we have not discussed that yet. That's something that we would like to incorporate. And we wanted to present it here to see if it was even possible for us to get somewhat close to real-time data. I would assume within 3 hours would be the closest real time.
Just to follow up on that question, there are national ambient air quality standards that the EPA publishes, and for most of those pollutants. So both the ambient thresholds and then also for spikes, like 1 hour exposure, 24-hour exposure, and so on. So we'll probably discuss that later.
Any questions online?
Oh, yes, we do. Okay. There was one question online from Jason Hale. Excellent presentation. Will you use low-cost monitors like purple air monitors for some of your input data?
To my knowledge, I don't know what would be low cost or what would not be low cost. I know that would be a question directed at Dr. Felix specifically, and then also Peyton, because I believe he's one that looks at what air quality they bring into. These were all questions we were going to pose later in the afternoon. We didn't want to get into the nitty-gritty right here, but thank you for your question, and we will try to answer that as best as we can moving forward.
Any other questions?
Okay. Perfect. Thank you. Thank you.
Okay, and our next group is the Rio RAINgers. They're a thunderstorm group, and it is Sophia and Jerica. Yeah, it's fine.
Okay.
Where does it keep? Okay. I'm trying to find. I'm not sharing it. That's why. Well, there's a big two in the corner. Screen one's or screen one's good too. Hi everyone. So we will be presenting on our proposed project. Our group name is Rio RAINgers, but the proposed question is, do thunderstorms bring their passports? Okay. So first off, we would like to acknowledge our stakeholder, the National Weather Service, for pitching this project to us, and any other stakeholders that have an interest in our project. And we also would like to thank the university and NSF for giving us this opportunity. Now, to introduce ourselves, my name is Sophia Mahalik. I am currently a master's student in marine biology advised by Dr. John Mardoris, and I study fish larvae, and I have a background in biology and earth and environmental science.
Hello, everybody. My name is Jerica Roselli. I'm currently a master's student in the CMSS program. My thesis work looks at isolated versus organized convection around the globe, and my advisor is Dr. Liu, and I have undergrad experience in environmental sciences. Okay, so before we got into our proposed question, the project that we decided to work on, we wanted to briefly touch on the other projects that the NWS proposed to us as potential collaborative work. The first one was Where Have Summer Thunderstorms Gone? This was about sea breeze driven thunderstorms that occur in the summer. We wanted to maybe look at what atmospheric conditions were responsible. They also proposed, will the sun come out today? This was about short-term predictions of wintertime, low stratus cloud behavior. And then we also had two other potential projects thrown out there about assessing rip current risk and assessing the risk of tropical funnels in non-tornadic waterspouts. All of these projects are very, very great, and we thank the NWS for presenting these to us. We think that, especially with the first two, there's a lot of data available to tackle these problems. We just only have 6 months in stages to be able to do it. So we think that would be better suited for something more long-term. So that brings us to the question that we do think we can get some work done within our 6-month time period, and that is how and under what conditions do thunderstorms originating over the mountainous terrain of northeastern Mexico progress eastward into South Texas and the Rio Grande Plains. So before we talk about the ins and outs of the project, I wanted to talk a little bit about thunderstorms. I know there's like a mixed bag of expertise here. So these thunderstorms happen because of orographic lifting. So moist air from the Gulf hits the mountains. This causes the air to rise and cool, and then we get thunderstorms. In some cases, these can grow into larger systems like mesoscale convective systems, and then these move east into South Texas, and it can bring heavy rain and severe weather The little GIF I have on the screen here is an example of this happening. This is from May 9th of 2014, taken directly from the National Weather Service. This particular system brought 70 miles per hour winds to Laredo, and some areas along the valley reported up to 3 inches of rain. So these systems do have the potential to cause severe weather, which is why it's important that we are able to predict them better. And these storms happen a lot in late spring and early summer, which coincides with our wet season. So yeah, that's what we have about that. And now we can get into our project objectives.
So our first objective is to develop a storm tracking algorithm for systems that come from the Sierra Madres and progress into Texas. The current models do not currently predict them very well, so if we can develop that algorithm first, then we can better understand what storms travel into Texas and what storms don't. We also want to analyze specific variables to improve forecast insight. So looking at things such as the track length, duration, and large-scale atmospheric conditions to better understand what causes some thunderstorms to move eastward and some to dissipate and not move into Texas. We also want to create a preliminary predictive model to predict if and how deep these storms will progress into Texas. So once we can identify some factors that are of importance using the model, then we can be able to see current thunderstorms, put them into the model, and see how they will travel and move. We finally want to be able to collaborate with the National Weather Service in Corpus Christi to align their outputs with stakeholder needs. While we have their input from this project idea, we want to better work with them to understand what their needs are and different forecasting tools that they currently use to see how we can better improve their forecasting.
So we are aware of some data sources that could help us achieve our project objectives. First, we're thinking about using the multi-radar, multi-sensor precipitation feature database, MRMS-PF database. So to my knowledge, this data is available every 6 minutes at a 1 kilometer spatial resolution, and we think this could be used for identifying and tracking the storms into Texas. And then to look at the large-scale atmospheric conditions, we want to use ERA 5. So this resolution is a little bit more coarse, but we still think it would be valuable whenever looking at large-scale conditions. And in terms of how AI fits into this project, so we think we can use ERA 5 to identify key atmospheric variables that influence how these storms are behaving once they are in Texas. And then we can apply AI and machine learning methods to build a predictive model that learns from past events and can maybe estimate how incoming storms will either strengthen or weaken depending on the case. We are very open to suggestions on what AI we can use. Both Sophia and I don't have much experience with machine learning, so any input is greatly appreciated.
So now we are moving on to our stakeholder relevance. We have a photo right here of the National Weather Service, but we don't want to limit it just to them. We are open to suggestions and collaborations from other individuals and organizations who are interested in this project. So one of the main goals of the project is to improve precipitation tracking and prediction, and to improve identifying and tracking of thunderstorms in South Texas. The thunderstorms, as they come on, they bring a lot of rain, and especially in areas that experience droughts like we do in South Texas, heavy rainfall in one event can lead to severe flash flooding. And so if we can improve tracking and prediction, that can also help manage water resources and plan for floods. We will also
be identifying factors affecting the movement of thunderstorms. So this could be applied to other mountain storm forming systems. The Sierra Madres and the thunderstorms that form over that area in Mexico are kind of unique and they're hard to predict, but they could be applied to other systems that are hard to predict or that have mountain storm forming systems. And by being able to better predict which thunderstorms move into Texas, then that would give more warning time for the National Weather Service to issue thunderstorm warnings to the public. The National Weather Service is the only organization allowed to issue thunderstorm warnings, so that's why this is of relevance for them.
So in terms of societal relevance, Sophia was kind of touching on it, but the current forecasting tools that we have often miss or misplace these types of systems. So as I said previously, these types of systems can bring flash flooding, damaging winds, large hail, frequent lightning. These pictures I have here are also taken from the National Weather Service. Thank you so much for having all of those things available. But this happened on May 8th of 2010 in Zapata, Texas. One of these types of systems brought flash flooding, strong winds. You can see it in this picture of the trees down, and then there was also large hail. And some of the communities in the South Texas area are at especially high risk because they're rural or low income, so they don't have as much resources. So warning time is especially important for these communities. So improving forecasts would support emergency management, help mitigate flood, and as Sophia was saying, would also help with water management and climate resilience in South Texas.
Oh, sorry. Okay. So this is our proposed timeline. We are open and subject to some changes, but hopefully over the summer and over the next few months, we will first start with filtering that MRMS PF database for storms that enter Texas from Mexico. So first off, we have to identify what thunderstorms exist, so then we can have that data available to then analyze the variables of that storm, and then we will also analyze atmospheric variables related to those storms. And then in the fall, around September, October, we will begin building our predictive model and evaluate which variables matter the most. Different variables could have different influence on our model, so we want to build it to ensure accuracy. And we will continue building that over the fall semester and work on any troubleshooting or any issues that arise to help improve our accuracy in predictions. And by the end of the semester or end of the year, by November, December, we hope to finalize our model and be able to validate our results against real data and see if we are able to predict the thunderstorms. And in December, that is when our project will be wrapping up and we'll be presenting our final project and key findings. So some of the expected outputs of the data is that we hope to have a storm tracking algorithm using the MRMS precipitation feature. So this would be just to identify the thunderstorms that are happening and occurring. Next, we will create statistical summaries of storm characteristics. So we will identify the different variables of the storm. So if we write a short little summary, that will be able to better convey our findings and the variables surrounding the thunderstorms. Rather than just looking at the data, we will summarize it to make it more digestible to the public and also to the National Weather Service so that they don't have to look through all the data and find out all the numbers themselves. We also hope to create visualizations to show the storm paths, frequencies, and spatial distributions of these thunderstorms. And then our final expected output is a preliminary predictive model using these data sets to estimate the likelihood and extent of these convective systems moving into South Texas. And then from these outputs, we have some expected outcomes. So we hope to improve the understanding of convective storm behavior as it passes from northeastern Mexico into Texas. the current knowledge is not very great on understanding if they move into Texas or not. So just better improved understanding of these systems will be beneficial to scientists and for forecasters. We also hope with this that it will enhance rainfall forecasting capabilities in South Texas, especially important because of the droughts. Kind of as I stated before, this whole model, even though it's not just about rain, rain does come with the thunderstorms, and rain is really important in these areas. So just having some information on the rainfall forecasting can really help manage water resources and be prepared for flooding and other environmental characteristics in the area, like farming and stuff. You won't have to, you know when to irrigate your crops, things like that. This will also help strengthen regional preparedness and decision-making for future weather events. If the community is better prepared and has more warning time about when a thunderstorm is coming, they can be better prepared, have more time to prepare their infrastructure and buildings, or have more time to get to safety. So we hope that this would improve not only infrastructure, but also human health.
So with this project, as we said a little bit before, we think it's highly feasible due to the large amount of data that's available and the clearly defined objectives. We think that this is something that we should be able to tackle within a 6-month time frame. However, there are some potential challenges. So MRMS provides reliable storm tracking. Once the storm is in Texas, if initiation happens in Mexico, that's something that MRMS we won't be able to use to be able to see that. Another potential challenge is we don't exactly know how many cases we have at this point. Once we start looking at the data and getting into it, we'll have a better idea of how many cases we can use to train an AI model. So depending on the amount of cases we have, it could present a potential challenge.
So our overall goal of this project is to improve predictive insight. So if we can identify the patterns that cause the eastward storm progression of these thunderstorms, then it allows for better advanced warning times and forecast confidence. So if there's higher confidence that these will happen, people will be more trusting and be more prepared. We hope that our model will aid the National Weather Service forecasters during these uncertain convective steps. We also hope to incorporate feedback from the forecasters to incorporate data that they monitor regularly or towards parameters and patterns that they see and think will tailor our model to be more useful. This will also help lay the groundwork for future integration of AI and machine learning into forecasting workflows based on stakeholder input. So different problems that the National Weather Service may have with their forecasting models, they could be further improved by using AI or machine learning models to improve their accuracy.
Thank you guys for listening to our presentation. If you have any questions, we'll be happy to take them. We have some questions ourselves that I have listed here. We are curious about what AI/machine learning model types would be best suited for this project. We'd also like to know how far in advance would a model like this need to provide insight in order to be useful, and what kind of accuracy or false alarm rate would be acceptable. So thank you, and we can take any questions.
Thank you so much. Excellent presentation. No questions per se, just an observation. I think out of all of the topics, we picked the right one. So this is one that's mystified the meteorologists in South Texas. I've been working in forecasting for over 30 years here in the local area. And this is still an unsolved problem. And so not only affecting us, but there are 3 weather forecast offices, Brownsville, Corpus Christi, and San Antonio, that all forecast for that front range of the Sierra Madre. And so very dangerous storms cross the border into Texas, impacting our coastal cities from Rio de Paso to Laredo, Zapata, and just life-threatening, devastating impacts that occur in the past. So I think you're going to help us hopefully solve what that underlying problem is of storm behavior along the coast. And also it would affect the Storm Prediction Center in Norman, Oklahoma, because they provide oversight and guidance for severe thunderstorm predictions along our area of Texas. And a lot of times as we're coordinating on putting up watches for storms, they just throw their hands up. They're just like, you know, we can predict severe weather all over the United States, but along the Rio Grande, we have no idea what's going on. So hopefully we can solve some of those problems with this. Unfortunately, there's no real data in Mexico, and so we've got a black hole there. But we can solve the problem with radar data because we've got level 2 radar data that we can obtain images all the way into Mexico up to the mountain ridge. So I think we can still help with that data set. So anyway, I'm looking forward to working with you all on this project. It could be a lifesaver.
Thank you.
My question was kind of related. So with ERA 5, where you're looking at predictor categories, is any of that available from Mexico?
Go back. Yeah, sure. I think it is. Yeah, I'm pretty sure it is. I'm just not sure if we don't have radar data to match it with how helpful it would be, but if anybody has any ideas of how you could tackle that, we greatly appreciate it.
Sorry for all my clicking, but the MRMF, right? That's right. Yeah. It goes into Mexico like a little bit. We had a map.
Yeah, I'm sorry.
I took it out.
Even MRMS does go into Mexico a little bit. I just don't know how reliable that data is, but ERA 5 is available for that area.
Thank you for your great presentations. Actually, for this issue, we have a GPM data set, but the resolution is different because it's 10 kilometers, I think, right? But RMS is 1 kilometer, right? It is available for US, but we can use GPM data set. But the resolution is different, but it is available globally. And also the temporal resolution is also different because I think MRMS is for 2 minutes, each 2 minutes, but GPM is for half an hour, like that. So you can use that GPM data set.
It's a snapshot every 3 days. GPM every 3 days. But if you use iWork, yeah, another thing you can use is iWork data, and it's half-hourly satellite retrieval, and they include passive microwave and everything. And that might be able to help. But the GPM radar itself doesn't really have a resolution, temporal resolution to help because it's overpasses everything else.
Oh, great talk. So for your these two data product you mentioned, MRMS and ERA5, this 1 kilometer versus 30 kilometer resolution, how much of the spatial overlap are you going to look at? So complete overlap, or is the ERA5 is much bigger?
Yes, the ERA5 is much bigger. We think if we're looking at large scale environmental factors, it should be okay. So yeah, that's another potential challenge.
Great presentation. My question is, for your output, are you thinking that you want to focus on the behavior of those thunderstorms specifically, or are you also trying to focus on specific regions of Texas or cities in Texas to understand risk in those areas as well? Like, is there a kind of a storm perspective and an area perspective?
As of right now, we're thinking of focusing this project on the South Texas area, and we're looking more so at storm characteristics. But evaluating risk is obviously important. So I think learning more about the storm behavior and everything would also help us with the societal aspect as well.
One more thing to that is we don't want to like focus on one maybe specific city or area in South Texas because we also aren't sure how much data we will have on thunderstorms. So we want to make sure that we have enough thunderstorms to be able to train our model. So if it ends up that we have enough data and there's tons and tons of thunderstorms and we can have enough data and put them all into the model, then maybe we could focus on a specific area, but we haven't looked at how many thunderstorms and how much data we have and then how much data we need to be able to train our model.
I think that's a good answer. That's a great answer, keeping in mind how much time they have to work with these projects. There are so many different outputs and outcomes that can stem out of what they're doing. But I think if we've been coming close to showing the tendency of when this will occur, will still provide some information for when National Weather Center could take on and look closely at those kind of do those kind of analysis.
Sorry, there was a question for me.
I was just looking at you because they're going to work with you. And I yesterday I'm looking at what they're proposing. We think they're proposing a lot already, and we don't want them to feel like they're not delivering. Doing one of those would be more than enough. It's on. It's up to you.
Okay. So quick question. How many of those events per year, like those severe storms crossing over and going towards the coast, you think we have?
Probably it could be a dozen a year, I would say. I mean, just in this month, we've got six event days where storms threaten western counties. So I think there's going to be a pretty good data set to where some years it's quiet, where there's nothing, but I think you'll probably have half a dozen to a dozen cases potentially in this year. So I think there'll be a lot of data. And I think the expected outputs will be very helpful to our meteorologists. So I like the direction that you're going.
Thank you.
Other question. In terms, I think defining the targets, if it's an area, if it's a coastal band, or maybe it's just what crosses what goes into the Gulf of Mexico, or do you have any recommendations on what they could be forecasting? That probably needs to come relatively soon and something that is as data friendly as possible.
Yeah, so just like a domain.
Yeah,
you're looking for a domain.
It's to be creative, whatever makes them the most chances for that.
I think that's where we can have discussions about this in the afternoon, right? So we can talk through these types of things and come up with the best answer.
Okay. Thank you, ladies.
Thank you, guys.
Okay, due to our interruptions this morning, we're going to skip our 15-minute planned break and go straight into our bacteria group's presentation. So this one is on, what is this one? Range.
So we're gonna all shuffle to the podium.
Clicker. There's two mics. I don't know if you want. If you're not using it, okay, flip it off. So only one is on at a time. Just use one microphone.
Okay, we'll to the podium then. Have it. So let me just tilt this to where it is. Let's see a little. Okay. Good morning, everybody. That's still morning, right? Yeah. Thank you all for staying so long with us, even though we've had some interruptions with our fun shuffling between buildings. I just want to thank you all for staying so long and listening to us speak. Today, our group is going to be presenting coastal bacteria predictions. We're focusing on predicting bacteria levels across the coastal bend for our Big Data Blitz project. We start off by passing it to Emily to talk about our acknowledgements.
So just like the other groups did, we just want to thank all the stakeholders for their presentations, specifically the Texas General Land Office, who will be going forward with us and supporting us along the way. We also invite, of course, everyone else who wants to help us. We also want to thank the National Science Foundation, Texas A&M Corpus Christi for supporting stages and giving us this great opportunity.
Okay, now we'll begin with some training introductions. I myself am Cody Lopez. My advisor is Dr. Drina Regulat, and I study groundwater interactions with local bays and estuaries, including its discharge and what it carries into them and what role it plays in the environment.
My name is Mohammed Shalakani. I'm a PhD student in Coastal and Marine System Science. My advisor is Dr. Drina Regulat, and I'm hydrogeophysicist. Kind of away.
My name is Emily McGee. I study dolphin acoustics and I work under Dr. Borbach.
My name is James. I've studied epidemic dynamics in the spatio-temporal predator-prey model, and my advisors are Dr. Vasilieva and Dr. Sadowski.
So going into our project, like Cody said, we are going to be studying bacteria levels in our coastal waters, specifically looking at Enterococcus. This bacteria lives in our coastal systems and comes from the intestines of people, dogs, birds, and other wildlife. It enters the water from various sources. I don't know if you can really see it, but in the top right image, these are just some examples of where this bacteria could come from, including sewage water, wastewater plants, or directly from wildlife like birds or from humans. And this bacteria varies very highly depending on the local conditions. So you could have two areas experience the same storm come through, but one area has really high bacteria levels because of certain runoff characteristics or the salinity or just because of that local condition compared to the other area. And so the levels of this bacteria in the water is important for monitoring because when found in high concentrations, it can lead to some potential health issues for people who are swimming in that water. So it can lead to heart, blood, or urinary tract infections. And it's also important because this bacteria is often resistant to antibiotics. So it makes it all that much more dangerous. And so right now, the Texas General Land Office and some other programs or organizations will go out and take water samples to look at the levels of bacteria in the water. So they'll go and take a water sample and they'll bring it back to the lab, and 24 hours later, they can determine what levels of or how high the concentration of bacteria is in the water. And if it's over a safety threshold, which is 104 colony forming units per 100 milliliters of water, so if bacteria is above that level in the water, that means that it's unsafe for swimmers to go in that area. And so this monitoring program is more of a reactive way to monitor the bacteria. So within that 24 hours, there could still be people swimming in that water where there's high concentrations of bacteria, and that could lead to infections. So our project is seeking to turn this warning system from being reactive to proactive. So we want to predict the bacteria levels before the people will even be in the water. And so our project, if we can develop this predictive model, it'll of course support the Texas General Land Office's mission in managing coastal safety, as well as other organizations that work to help monitor the safety of coastal waters. It'll also improve the efficiency of alerting the public by doing earlier warning systems. This helps not only public health, but also just general health for the public, I guess. And then also, this project will be identifying the factors that can lead to these bacterial spikes. So we'll be looking at the environmental factors, and this can help inform future management decisions as well as policy making that will have to do with coastal safety and management. So our objectives defined right here is to first support development of a predictive model that will estimate when and where the bacteria concentrations along Texas beaches may exceed these safety thresholds. And then two, to expand and improve the model by incorporating additional environmental variables and testing it across more geographic regions. And so the previous stages training cohort actually started this project. And so this year we are going to expand upon that model by adding Nueces County, as well as some new predictors, including rainfall, salinity, and wind. And we'd also like to try and add human and bird activity into the model. Obviously, those are probably one of the more important factors. And so we're hoping to quantify that in some way. And that's one of the things we'd like to discuss today later. And now I'll give it to Mohammed.
So these maps here show our focus area in Nueces, Brazoria, and Galveston counties. And on the left, you can see location map highlighting the study area, the 3 counties outlined in red. The middle map zooms in Nueces County, where we have mapped stream network from digital elevation model at 30-meter resolution. As you can see here, there is a dense stream network dredging into Corpus Christi Bay and nearby estuaries. And the right map displays the stream network in Brazoria and Galveston. Similar to Nueces, we have dense stream network, and which are very critical to understanding surface water and flood risk in coastal environments. So this is our general framework for our project. The model began with combination of environmental and human-related inputs variables, including historical bacteria level, rainfall data, salinity, temperature. We also investigating human presence and bird activity as potential inputs. This may help us account for local source of contamination. However, those data sets are still being evaluated for consistency and coverage. And using these variables, these variables will train our machine learning model to identify patterns that tend to occur before spikes in bacterial level. With our ultimate goal is to generate forecast predictions that can be used by agencies to develop an early warning system. Now I'm going to hand it to Jane to talk about proposed data sources.
To build our prediction model, we're going to use following data. Our data, most of the data comes from Texas Beach Watch program. They're going to regularly test the water quality at over 170 beach sites along the Texas coast. Texas coast. Especially checking the bacteria level. And then we're going to use also USGS and Texas Water Development Bank to see the fresh water inflow and see the river level. And we also use National Data Voice Center to know they're going to provide us with the speed and water temperature and salinity. And we are also thinking about using the next three data sources. One is the tax record. It gives us how many people live near the coast, Texas coast. And TX DOT is the traffic data. It provides us an idea of how many people visit the beaches. And the bird data, which bird data from broadcast and eBird and urban society, it is very important because birds can contribute to water pollution. As we start building our models, we consider three guys. So first one, we're gonna use a cohort model and data set from the last year because they already built the models. So we're gonna expand the model using their models and the data set. And especially we're gonna add some beach area, especially Lewis County. And we believe this help our model cover more area and be more accurate. And machine learning part, we're gonna consider three models. The first one is a regression model, which is find which input variables are related to the bacterial level. And we consider also geospatial time-based models. This is identify the pattern over the time and the species. And we also consider tree-based model, kind of random forest gradient boosting, because this is very effective when we're dealing with the data, big data set. And we have two questions in mind. What other analysis should we consider? And should counties be modeled separately?
So this is our proposed timeline. As you can see here, we have three main steps. First one, data collection and processing. This will be during this month and the following months. And model development will be run beginning of July through September. And from October to December, which is the end of our program, will be generating our products and maps. And at the end of this project, we plan to deliver several cool products. First one, we will generate a clean and emergent data set that integrate bacteria data with relevant environmental and human activity variable, something that could be beyond this project. And second, we will develop a predictive machine learning model along with a full code base and documentation, so the future teams or stakeholder can reduce or build upon our work. And we will also create a set of finalized visual products such as maps that display forecasted bacteria level by location and time. This will be helpful for communicating to both technical and non-technical audience. Finally, we will include a feature analysis table that highlights which variable were most influential in predicting the bacteria level, offering insights to what factors stakeholders may want to monitor more closely going forward.
Okay, so I'm going to talk about some of our expected outcomes and their significance. We anticipate that if we can do our job properly, we'll help improve public health response, because we're trying to shift this from a reactive-based response where they're finding high levels 24 hours after the fact and then reporting them to the public. We're trying to hopefully generate forecasts so they can warn the public ahead of time when this is happening, because as our little stat that I put up here shows, from 2017, the CDC, in some of the years, they found up to 55,000 people in the US who got infected with various strains of Enterococcus through various means, leading up to about 5,400 fatalities. Not all of these are from environmental infections, but I'm sure that environmental infections did not help. We are hoping to, of course, contribute to the science body in general. If we can use our data-driven insights to find out what factors we can identify and contribute to bacterial pollution, that's obviously helpful for the scientific community. And lastly, if we can identify those factors, that helps us be relevant to policymakers, because they can then try and look at these factors and come up with recommendations for monitoring, infrastructure, or public usage changes in policy to try and prevent these bacterial increases from happening in the first place. We face a couple of challenges, as my other group members have mentioned as we've gone through this presentation. The human and bird data, we're still investigating. These are just brought up to us recently as we were coming up with the idea for the project. We have to try and make sure that we can actually use this data. Human behavior is highly variable and unpredictable, so is the same as somewhat for bird and other animal data. It's difficult to monitor it consistently across all sites. They don't all have the same time steps. They don't all have the same accuracy and availability, but we're going to do our best to see if we can fit them together and to work them into our project. And then there's environmental noise, like water chemistry variability. So I work in geoscience a lot, and I already know from experience how heterogeneous, in other words, how inconsistent data can be across even the same shoreline at the same beach. There's so much variability in water chemistry from one location to another. It'll be difficult for us, but we're going to try and do our best to try and take a integrated reading of the salinity, the temperature, the turbidity along the coastlines that we're trying to input into this project, but keeping in mind the limitations of how much change there is, even from small location to location. These things are impacted by the tides, by the rain, by different other types of pollution input going in. So we're going to try and include as much data as we can to make sure our model is as accurate as possible. In conclusion, we do think this project is feasible. With the time scale that we have the previous group's work that we can build off of. We can take in new data, add to it, build on it, try and make it better and more accurate. We think this is important to the General Land Office and coastal managers because it provides something that's, I think, the people would really enjoy, an early warning system, being able to be proactive about beach advisories. And, this is good for the general public health, hopefully, if it starts to work out. And we can offer insight into future monitoring and policy decisions if our model starts to generate accurate and valuable results. So I want to give some thanks to our funders again, to National Science Foundation for making all this possible, to the Stages Program for having us here, to Texas A&M, of course, for being our university and having us all in this area, and to the Texas General Land Office for informing us of this problem and helping us become aware as we can try and address it. And then I want to turn it to Jane for some questions for discussion that we want you guys to be thinking about before we get to our breakout sessions.
We would like to discuss about the following questions afternoon. So should we try more advanced model like neural network? Should we model each county by itself or use one model for whole study area? And third, can you find good data on birth migration and human activity? And last one is, will we be able to predict the future well enough and early enough to take action? Thank you so much.
Do you have any questions from the crowd?
Thank you. Perhaps I missed this, but where is the source of data on the human activity coming from?
So we're going to try and investigate whether or not we can use the tax records for population density, how many people live in these areas. And then we're also investigating TechStop to have some public data available on traffic movements in the area, to see if we can basically use how many vehicles are in the area as like a analog for how many people are at the beaches, how many people are actually in the area. Because if there's a huge increase in traffic over a weekend, that could be possibly, we're still trying to figure this out, an analog for how many people are actually on these islands at that time. That's our current plan, but we're open to new ideas.
So you're using census data on the entire community to guess who's at the beach that weekend?
For tax records, it would be that would be more like census data, and for traffic data, that would be more like who's there today, who's there that day at that particular time. So I think the traffic data might be more live, but the census data would just be more like a general idea of a baseline factor.
I don't know, probably, wow, by the way, a very nice presentation. So I remember in the past, someone mentioned use the cell phone, cell company in the cell phone, just to be very specific. Consider that.
We're still going over the data from last year's cohort, but from what I recall, they had to, I think that month that data was not publicly available. I think someone actually purchased that data for them to use. So we're not exactly, that's kind of out of the scope of our project to go and start purchasing data sets. But if we can find anything like that, similar like cell phone data for like live public amount of people in the area, of course we'd be happy to add that to our data set.
I think it's expensive.
Yeah.
Maybe you mentioned this, but I was just thinking of other types of data sets like wastewater treatment plants or stormwater. Also, are you thinking about those as well?
We hadn't at the moment, but that's a good idea. We'd be happy to try and see if we can add those in as well.
Very nice stuff. A couple questions. One is you talk about bacteria. Is that any specific group of bacteria, or this is regional dependent, like skin best and any difference?
As far as I know, up to this point, is we're just studying Enterococcus generally. We're not looking at any specific species that fall under that family or group.
Yeah, so the reason I asked that is because that really depends on the sauce, right? The bacteria sauce. Like you talking about a bird, those are migrating, those are seasonal, and the human being might be like location related, something more flood related, right? So they have very different sauce. So I see that as a big challenge of that is where the bacteria coming from, and then the other is the transportation basically is because of flooding must use the wastewater. So Jane talked very important they have in wastewater, so also be interesting data source.
Absolutely. Yes, we were talking about yesterday just how variable the bacteria is based on location because of things like that, the wastewater runoff, they can vary so differently between locations themselves. So that's definitely something to add to the model for sure.
Yeah, this would be very interesting because I don't even know is that any physical model can really predict this. This is so much variables in that stream.
I was just looking for the bird data. Maybe you can use iNaturalist, which is an app where people log what species they've seen. So that might actually have a geopoint on the beaches you're looking at also.
Thank you. Yeah, that's a really great idea. I'm familiar with iNaturalist and also eBirding is a really good source net. So we'll definitely consider both of those. Thank you.
I think to mention one more type of data, but another thing that might be worth looking at is like land use land cover around those streams. So if it's highly urbanized, maybe you're already thinking about that versus row crops versus.
Thank you. Yes, that's a good idea.
Our GIS expert would look at that. Yeah.
Any other questions?
Can I mention a bug real quick? I just want to mention something that was brought up to us before today's event started is that the Surfrider Foundation is also a potential source for some data for us. They have 3 monitoring sites on Mustang Island, where they've been recording bacteria on days that the Texas Beach Watch does not record data, so they can add to our data set. So just want to point out that we have that information.
There will be more discussion in the breakout session, but there are so many different ways to look at bacteria to isolate just locations that have potentially more contribution from humans rather than the ones that maybe are from wildlife, or just like locations that have higher occurrences generally. Some of that variability that's in the sources and the actual level of how much bacteria there's in water could be eliminated. But that requires longer analysis. That's the limitation. There's only just a few locations. If you don't have a long record, you can't model it properly. So that's why generally the models are done looking at all the data. But there is so much more to that is the location. So if you take Mrs. County, like you mentioned, where you start with Corpus Christi Bay and you go from, if you have the flooding flows, right? You go along the salinity gradient to the Gulf and you go to Laguna Madre with higher salinity. And salinity is so important in the survival of bacteria. This is temperature
and so on. So there are so many different variables to add here to look at, but it's also the source, like you were saying, Faye. Where is it coming from? That is a little difficult to determine with the current markers that are being used because they don't have the same resistance. So if we're finding bird markers in groundwater, they're higher than they are for the human markers. They're sitting right next to the sewage lines they're failing and the sewage in the ditches. So it's very obvious to the humans, but they're not found. So it's really not a straightforward problem, but there are more ways to look at it, and that's what we're trying to do. We're just getting closer, one by one. So, yeah. Any other questions for them? Remember, there's a breakout session after lunch, so we'll have more time for conversation, and please give the groups feedback. Yes.
So because you're building on a project that was done last year on a similar topic, have you spoken to that group and figured out what their roadblocks were so that you can preemptively mitigate them as you're moving forward?
That is one of the major things we will be doing. We've already gotten access to their OneDrive, but we'll definitely be in contact with them on their results as well as any issues they had with the data. We've had some discussions about it already, but this is definitely an ongoing mission.
And they did use wastewater discharges. Well, thank you so much, everybody, and thank you, group. Great. We're looking forward to the engagement. We want to remind everybody that lunch will be here soon. There's still breakfast if you still want to eat some of that. But after lunch, we'll have the breakout sessions. So please make sure to stick around and help our groups maybe narrow down on what we should be looking at, as they're trying to do a lot. They're overachievers, so it makes a lot of sense. Would like to take a group picture with everybody, so don't leave. We need you for a group picture. And then for our stakeholders, thank you very much for coming and for working with them. Please let them know in your conversations today what your availability for connecting over the summer and until the end of the project, so they can show you their progress and you can give them feedback so they act. Okay, thank you.
Okay, if I can get everybody's attention, we're ready to report out. And our first group that'll report out is our Rio RAINgers.
Okay, potentially, we might change that name to Rio RAINgers. Do we think that's better?
Yeah, much better.
Yeah.
Okay, that sounds like a good consensus. So in our little breakout group, we had a very productive conversation with John. We got some information about another potential collaborator at the National Weather Service, Nick Carr, who gave the original presentation to the Stages group. And so he will be helping us access some data. We plan to get a little tour of the National Weather Service office, maybe within the next week. And we were kind of just discussing more of the data sets and what data we will be using. Dr. Chantal Yu has some good data that we can be using that is from 2017 onward, that has the data for the thunderstorms. And then we also just kind of went over what areas and defined on a map, kind of what the big or large scale atmospheric data that we would be using from the larger satellite that had the 30-kilometer resolution.
Yeah, I think Sophia covered everything. We have our first steps kind of defined for this project. We're going to go ahead and start looking at the MRMS data, and we're going to see how many potential cases we have, and then from there we can look at tracks and then look at the AR5 data for atmospheric conditions. So yeah, I think we're off to a great start.
Thank you, ladies. Our next group to report out will be Airware.
We're kind of stuck on our name. I'm probably not gonna take a consensus on that one. We had a really great talk with Peyton and Dr. Tissot, and of course our two advisors. They were there and helped out with a lot of our data issues. We're gonna look into kind of getting more fine scale, more specifically Ingleside on the Bay, using the ground scale monitoring, and then incorporate satellite data as needed if we can. And then we'll also probably use a more fine scale meteorological product to get a better idea of where the pollutants are going to go. That was the main points. Peyton has actually invited us to go tour all of their monitoring stations tomorrow. So kudos to everybody getting to go and incorporate with the stakeholders. Do you have anything to add? I think those were our main points as we've refined down and have a better idea of where to start. So.
Okay, and then our final group is our bacteria group, which we're still settling on a name.
Hello. We had a really great conversation. It was very helpful. We basically talked about the kind of data sets that we're going to need, where they could come from, and got some good names to contact. We also talked about the basics of just the modeling itself. We got some insight into how to clean the data and how to move forward with it, and then maybe start putting into the models and types of models. We also got a quick rundown from the previous cohort. They just so happened to come in, and so we got to hear a little bit about their experience and where they left off and some of their top pieces of advice. The number one challenge, of course, is going to be collecting the data, so that's where we're starting. We're going to meet soon and divide and conquer and get all the data sets, and then start cleaning it and getting ready for the fall where we'll start to model. So that's kind of our rundown for today. Thank you.
Okay, did you want to say something?
If there are any final thoughts for the groups going forward, any last minute advice?
Well, so now as an outsider, I actually missed last year's the cohort 2 group presentations, but this is the group you guys are. I see a lot better information with the stakeholders. So excellent presentations. Good work. I look forward to your end of the year. Okay.
Yeah, I'll echo Champagne. So it's really great to see everyone's presentations today. I always had one thing because I was tasked with a thing that I was not able to accomplish during this breakout groups, which is if you haven't come up with a sort of set of expectations or agreed upon communication plan for stakeholders yet, I would encourage you to get that set up sooner than later, just so that it's got a path moving forward.
Yes, that's very important. Everybody gets really busy really quickly, and time is of essence for you. The sooner you have your data and your plan with the stakeholder, the sooner you can go, down that path and be more efficient and not stress, because stress adds. So with that in mind, as you go forward and you start going through this process, remember we're here, come talk to us. If you see this is becoming too much, remember to talk about it. Do not internalize it. Do not let it make this a pleasant experience rather than let it be a great experience at the end, okay? Just remember that. Okay. Thank you so much, everyone. Thank you all for your great presentations and everybody else said. It was really good. Thank you.